pleasure that I welcome our main speaker tonight. Aaron Harris is a grassroots activist, former campaign manager, and executive director of Direct Action Texas. Direct Action Texas was created to fight for 4 areas of concentration: government transparency, government ethics, public debt, and civil liberties. Direct Action Texas has a single mission: to help the grassroots take action in changing local government. His presentation is especially timely due to the important local elections coming up in May. He will talk to us about how voter fraud is being perpetrated right here in Texas, and will provide us with information on what actions the legislature should take during this session to curb the fraud. Please give Aaron a warm welcome.
Well, I appreciate that. So let's see here. All right. Well, thank y'all for having me. It's very timely. We were talking about this beforehand with Tracy. So this week, we scheduled this several months ago, a good while back, it was last year. And this week, of course, we've seen a lot of highlights with Trump and conversations about voter fraud investigation. It's very interesting to see the dialogue, and this, you'll learn, I'm going to give you some of the background. This was never an issue that I was into. It was never my focus. It became my focus due to an election that we were involved in, and it was actually the media that tipped us off to, we should do some digging, and so we did. But this is such a big issue all over the country. And you have one big block in this country on the left, less over here, right? Over here on the left, who is, I'm dyslexic, so, who is very invested in telling us that voter fraud doesn't exist. I was one of these personally who believed that it existed, but of course it existed in Chicago, right? It existed in New Orleans, where they found, we were talking, somebody mentioned this earlier, that Congressman had 100,000 in foil in his freezer, remember that? You think of it in those types of places, but not in red county like Tarrant County. You think of it in maybe Dallas or San Antonio, right? So this was an eye-opening experience for us. And I'll just say this about the Trump thing. I'm excited about some of the stuff Trump's talking about. We have actually my election lawyer, somebody that Matt probably knows well, Trey Traynor, has been announced as being on the legal team, a special advisor to General Mattis and to the Trump administration. I'm excited about that. I've had conversations with him this week about how we might interact with the Department of Justice on their investigation into voter fraud. And I'll tell you, this is a much bigger problem. We started off with Tarrant County, was the first one we filed, and then we did Hill County as well this year. I'm going to cover both of those. But we'll tell you that tomorrow we'll be filing complaints on Harrison County. How many of you know where Harrison County is? There's one, good. Harrison County is far east, way out there by Shreveport, Marshall, Texas. And then we've just started, surprise, surprise, the Dallas County investigation. And that one is going to be really interesting. So let me get into this. I'm going to go through some nuts and bolts when I get to the Tarrant County part, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. So hang in there, guys. So again, I am Direct Action Texas. We focus on local government races. As a matter of fact, I see somebody back here. Last weekend we had a workshop in at our offices for people that want to run for office. We try to train them. We had some nuts and bolts, had some speakers come in and talk about what it takes to run for city council, school board. We had amazingly 56 people show up, conservative people running to run for office. And the good thing for you guys is Collin County was the most represented county out of the 4 or 5 counties that were there. So yeah, good for y'all. As much as, you know, Tarrant County likes to talk a lot of trash, but I'll tell you what, you guys have a great delegation up here. Sometimes I'm a little jealous. Matt, don't tell those guys, okay? All right, so the first thing we did earlier this year, kind of made some headlines, was down in Hill County. So Hill County is Hillsborough, right, where 35W and 35E come together to the south of us, or what we all know as the merger of perpetual construction. And so, yeah, y'all all know, right? I graduated high school in '95, started driving that for college, and that's been under construction ever since. Last year was the first year it's ever been not under construction. So what we did there is, after the election, House District 8 was a race that got a lot of attention. Some of y'all watched, some of y'all didn't. That was Byron Cook, was challenged by a good friend of mine, Thomas McNutt. And that was a 4-county race with 29,000 votes, and there was only a difference of 225 votes, okay? Incredibly close. Those of you that are mathematicians, it's like 0.03%, something like that. So it's crazy. Well, in Hill County in particular, what was of interest was the official results published showed 9,038 ballots cast, okay? Now, all of y'all, and myself included, probably went to school prior to Common Core. So when I went to school, the principle was one person, one vote, right? I don't know how they teach it now. But what we found was that there was only 7,171 voters who voted in that election, okay? The amazing thing about this is it took us 2.5 months to get the data. We requested the data 2 days after the election. It took us 2.5 months to get it. And so we actually had to go through, we got the sign-in sheets, or what were called combination forms. You know, when you go vote, everybody signs in, or most of us did. And so we went through and literally counted them by hand, and then 80 is absentees, so you have to add the absentees because they don't sign in. We came up to 7295. Ends up, we still don't know where they came from. There was really only 7,171 people that voted. Yet, this election was certified by the county, by the state party, and by the Secretary of State with 9,038 votes. Okay? So we called and said, after we reviewed the data, I actually thought I was crazy. There was only one subject I was any good at in school, and that was math. And I was like, man, maybe I wasn't that good at math either. And so I did it every which way. I had a bunch of people look at it. I sent it to other people. I said, tell me what I did wrong. I actually had the state rep that knows more about elections, but I know Stephanie Click. I had Stephanie come in and look at it, and everybody said, looks like you did it right. So I actually called the elections department. I said, can y'all help me? I have a question. I'm showing that 19.29% of your ballots have no voter. And her response was, sir, obviously you don't know what you're talking about because somebody else would have caught that, right? She has since resigned. So in August of last year, August 2016, ES&S, which is the elections equipment vendor for Hill County, sent out a press release. I kind of cut it off because it's kind of long, but really it all is summarized right here. It was found that the election results released were incorrect. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. I learned a lot of things through this process. One of the things I learned is after the initial 30 days, there's nothing that can be done, okay? So there's no ability to call for a recount. There's no ability to change anything in that election. But we did have something unprecedented. So the Attorney General's office, we handed all this over to the AG, and the Attorney General's office sent out an application for impoundment of electoral records, which is a fancy word for a warrant to impound everything. The district judge signed that on November 9th, the day after the general election. They actually held, there's no term for it, so we made up the term criminal investigation recount, because it's never been done before. It was a recount not for the purposes of recounting the election, but for the purposes of figuring out where are these nearly 20% of the votes. How did this happen? That investigation is ongoing. I do expect the findings of that investigation to become public probably first quarter of this year. That could be, who knows, right? It could just be we didn't find anything. It could just be they messed up. I personally, there was a high level of incompetence in that situation. You had 66 candidates on that ballot. There was a county commissioner's race decided by 38 votes. There was a county constable's race decided by 54 votes. And of course, Thomas's race was decided by 225 votes. And yet you have nearly 2,000 ballots with no voters. We do know what some of those ballots were. I won't get into all the weeds, but they did double and triple count some paper ballots. We were able to track those, but there's still this number that we'll never be able to recount. So I get asked all the time, did Thomas actually win that election against Byron or the county clerk and judge? It was the clerk, the commissioner, and constable. All three of those races were within 50 or less. I can't ever tell you that. I can tell you statistically it's probable that some of those were called incorrectly, but we will never know that because there is nothing in the law that allows for that. And it's crazy.
So we can't throw out the liberals?
Well, there's 2018 will be here before you know it. after that one, so Hill County, I tell you that just to give you exposure to it. It was a Republican primary, and that's under investigation. And I largely think that was incompetence, and then there was an effort to keep it quiet. We screwed it up. Let's not talk about it. Let's not let everybody know we screwed it up. And maybe something will come of that.
Like whom?
I'm sorry?
Like whom?
Well, there's an ongoing investigation, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Oh, come on.
We will have Q&A at the end, but there will be a lot of things that I just can't discuss publicly. The thing that we got the most attention for, I was pretty proud of. We were at the top of Drudge Report for a whole week, which was really cool. It was in October, so it was right before the election. Greg Abbott and Attorney General Paxton tweeted about it, but it's the largest investigation in Texas history about voter fraud, and it was right there in Tarrant County. We made the front page of the Star Telegram on the Sunday paper, top of the fold for 3 weeks in a row. It was good to do it right in our backyard. So what we found in Tarrant County was what's called vote harvesting or ballot harvesting. How many of you know what that term means? Okay. A lot more people know what it means today than they did a year ago or 2 years ago, because there's been a lot of conversation about it. But a harvested ballot, I simplify it by saying a harvested ballot is one which is walked through and otherwise would not have been cast were the harvester not to have walked it through. And I'll explain that in just a second. You can harvest a vote legally or illegally, and what we're going to be talking about tonight are illegally harvested votes. So what does that mean? I can go up to a house of a voter who's eligible to vote by mail. You're eligible to vote by mail for a couple of reasons. If you're 65 or older, if you are disabled, if you're going to be out of the county during the voting, or a situation which some of you may relate to, if you're incarcerated but eligible to vote. Anybody here? So thankfully I've never had to do that one. So usually you're talking about 65 and older voters. So I show up at your house, I knock at your door. Hi, Ms. Smith, I'm Aaron, I'm here to help you vote. Here's an application for a ballot. So to vote by mail, you have to send an application. They send you the ballot, you fill it out, and send it back. And I'll walk through it in a second. So I can show up, I can offer you an application, you can fill it out, mail it back, and then I can come and say, hey, Ms. Smith, did you get your ballot? Make sure you send your ballot in. All that's perfectly legal. Where you get into illegalities is in helping them with it. You have to follow, you have to sign up as an assist, or if you sign for it, you have to be a witness, etc. So I'll show you some of that here in just a second. So this is the application. This is the main form that the county would provide you. Will look something like this. And basically you have to have the voter's information up here, address, which election they want, why they're eligible to vote by mail, and then the most important thing right over here, which is the voter must sign. The election code says the voter must sign the application. You send that in, this is what you're going to get back. It's a lot of stuff, it can be a little confusing. The white sheet here would be your actual ballot, and the yellow one. These are the two we care about. So if you look at this yellow one, this is what's called your carrier envelope. You're going to fill your ballot out, put it in that carrier envelope, you seal it, and then you sign it right there. If you notice, they make the signature line so that you have to sign over the lip of the envelope, okay? And so there you go, there's another sample. So as I alluded to earlier, what happened was I was involved in an election for a water board race, which is kind of an obscure race, but it was a big deal over there. It was a multi-million-dollar race. It was bizarre. And we lost, but we lost in numbers that did not add up to the data. We had polling, we had a lot of data that didn't add up. The day after, I got a phone call from the Star Telegram, and the reporter said, she wanted a statement, you know, from the loser, of course, and she says, welcome to the Fort Worth Way. But she said it in a way that kind of really chapped me a little bit, and granted, I was still licking my wounds. And then the Fort Worth Weekly called, and the odd thing was the reporter said the same thing, welcome to the Fort Worth Way. And I hung up, and I thought to myself, what is going on here? And the third one was the Fort Worth Business Press called, and she said, have you figured it out yet? And that was where I kind of lost my cool, and I screamed and yelled at her, and I said, what do you guys all know that I don't? So she alluded to voter fraud. And I said, well, if you guys won't do your jobs, if you won't investigate it, give me 3 phone numbers and 3 names, and I will. To her credit, she did. And what I found out was everybody in these communities knew about it but me. I was the laughing stock, okay? So after hearing about vote harvesting from these people, I took and we began ordering the applications for ballot by mail. So these applications, after the elections are over, are available to you through an open records request. as well as the carrier envelope, which was that yellow one I showed you. And we weren't sure what we were looking for, but right away we noticed that various voters in town had the same handwriting. So these voters all live in a couple precincts, and we found this particular handwriting, we found nearly 1,000 applications with the same handwriting. Now, I can fill out these are cut for a reason, okay? Like I said, there's an investigation. I'm just showing you the handwriting. But I can fill out your application, but I have to sign as an assistant, okay? None of these had assists. They were also so voluminous that it was very alarming. What we also found was they were by specific turfs, specific regions, okay? So that handwriting I just showed you, this was her turf. Now what all these precincts have in common is a racial demographic, okay? These are all black neighborhoods. Another handwriting we found, also nearly 1,000, this was her turf, these were her precincts. This demographic is all Hispanic, and so on, so on. We actually found about 5 different turfs it was broken into. So we had a map on the wall, and we started color coding them. It was a lot of fun, but it was bizarre. It was just unfolding before our eyes. So what we found were things like this. So this is Mary Medrano and Anna Garcia. Now Mary and Anna are sisters. They're in their mid to late 70s. And this is their application. Now if you look at their 2 applications across here, you'll notice the handwriting is the same. And if you look at their signatures, you'll notice their signatures look very much alike on here. Now down here is the signature for the carrier envelope. Now for those of you that don't know, you send in the application, they send you the ballot. When your carrier envelope comes back, you're now going to look at this signature right here in the blue box. The blue and red are things we added. You're going to look at the signature on the blue box, Anna M. Garcia, and 2 to 3 people are going to sign off saying that these signatures match. If they don't match, they're supposed to reject the ballot. Now, would anybody in this room sign off on a form saying those signatures match? Nope. Exactly. Now, not only do these not match, I want to show you, this is Anna Garcia's, this one I just showed you. I'm blowing hers up, and so again, look at this application. It's all handwritten, and pay attention. You can pick out a number of different things on this application that make it unique, like that dot. See that dot right there above the N? You have this X, kind of got a double swirl there. You got a double swirl here. Now, if you go and look at this one, you have the same dot, the same double X. Everything on this application is the same as this application. Y'all agree? Okay. We've had multiple forensic handwriting experts look at it, including law enforcement. The thing is now, everybody do like a puppy and tilt your head. If you look right up here, you'll see the date, 4/29/2015. This was her application for the May race in 2015, the one that I was involved in. Now, if you do it again, you look right here, you'll see this is her application for this year's primary, last year's primary for February 2016. They're reusing the same applications year after year, okay? And they're actually faxing these things in. I'll show you that here in a minute. And so what we found was literally thousands of these that the voter, not only did the voter not fill that out, Ms. Garcia, we went and interviewed her, she didn't fill this out, it's not her handwriting, but they're not even aware that these are being sent in on their behalf, okay? And so I'll show you a few more here. If you'll notice on these applications, same handwriting as the Garcias and Mary Medrano's. If you notice here, San Juana Flores and Danny Flores, again, the signatures are the same handwriting. I don't know why it cuts these off again, but I'll just tell you, formatting, sorry about that, but the signatures don't match. Here's San Juana's actual signature. Those do not match in any way, shape, or form. This was one of my favorite, Concepcion Esquivel. We have a total of 7 different signatures we found for her so far. I have 4 of them here. So here's Concepcion, and here's her real signature. On this one, what I love is she forgot her last name, so she scratched it out and started again, and she still got it wrong. Up here, she wrote her last name wrong, caption. Her name's not captioned. On here, she put Connie Escavera, and again, that's not her name. And so, in a 2-year period, we found a total of 7 signatures for Concepcion. Maria Guevara and Jose Guevara, again, these are their real signatures in blue. You can see the signature on their application. This was from the 15 race. We have an Amber Alert?
Yeah.
All right. It's funny because you always know because it goes the whole crowd now, right? But so you can see, and again, once again, when this carrier envelope came in, 2 to 3 people signed off saying those signatures match. Now, one of the other things we found in Tarrant County is digital signatures. And so we actually found this originally, believe it or not, we heard stories when we were interviewing voters, but it was Tarrant County Elections that actually showed this to us, the staff, because they knew this was going on. And then I found out that they had admitted to it in court and the judge let it go. No, because the law doesn't prohibit electronic signatures. But there is a bill filed this year by Ramon Romero to allow electronic signatures, and I trust that Matt Shaheen and others will never let that go. So what they do is they show up in neighborhoods and they'll do petitions. Usually it's going to be Republicans are trying to deny Hispanics right to vote or African Americans right to vote, sign our petition. These people will sign the petition on an iPad. Once they have that, they lift it, and then they just print the signatures on the applications and on the carrier envelopes. These are Maria and Jose Guevara's signatures from the 2014 Democrat primary election, and they happen to both be digital. I'm going to show you some here in a minute. And they have what I call a first and second generation digital signature. And I'm going to show you up here in the top corner. If you see on Maria's signature up here, it's a heavier, darker pen. In the originals, it's more pixelated because it's digital. But you can see how when the screen stops, it cuts her Y off. Mm-hmm. On these, this is their first generation. And it's interesting because what I'm showing you here on this screen, these are all the canvasser's signature that for some reason they felt need to put digital, which makes me wonder if she wasn't even present. They just did this in a workshop. We do know they have some. But if you notice, right here's Rebecca Sign's name. You notice the line's gone. You can see it stops right there. And the text back here is all gone. That's because the first generation digital signature, the image has a white background. And when they insert it on top of it, it whites out everything behind it. Y'all see that? Okay? So these are all digital. Now, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of these. Now this one is a digital signature, but it's their second generation. Again, it goes back to the heavier pen mark, the way they printed them and captured them. One of the things that's really common with these is they print them up above the line. A normal person will not naturally sign up on the line like that. You can see this one goes up there as well. There are thousands and thousands of applications and ballots just like these. So due to the ongoing investigation, we're not releasing exact numbers, but it's right around 30,000 of these we found in the last 2 years in Tarrant County, okay? Now, one of the problems is retention laws, okay? For municipal elections, these are only retained for 6 months. And for all other elections, they're retained for 24 months. Here's the problem. When's the municipal election? In May. All of these harvested applications are annual applications for ballot by mail. You can apply for ballot by mail for an individual election or for the whole year. Our legislature, in all of its wisdom, 4 years ago, added annual applications for ballot by mail. And when they did, they left in place the code that says that an application for ballot by mail is subject to public release the day after the election for which the application was applied for. Well, if it's an annual, the election that it's applied for is the last one of the year. You think that would be November, but we just got pushback on that because you could have a special election up till right at the end of November, beginning of December. They can still file for a special election. So I can't get copies of annual applications for ballot by mail till essentially Christmas. By then, I'm past 6 months from the municipals. I literally just got, this last week, we requested some ballot by mail applications for Hidalgo County down in the valley, and they've already shredded them. Wow. The TRWD race, guess what they did? The race where we found all this in, they shredded them at 6 months and 1 day, okay? We were lucky in that we had copies of everything. Let me tell you a little bit about Hidalgo County. Have y'all heard, has anybody heard about the school board race down in Hidalgo County? Okay, most people haven't heard about it. In 2011, they were busted for this exact same operation. The AG and the FBI came in. They did a school board all the way up to congressional race with mail-in ballots, deployed to get us. The operation is the same. We have the same investigator, same prosecutor as did the Valley. They overturned some elections down there. 3 school board members committed suicide. The president of the school board committed suicide on New Year's Day, December 2012. They just finished the last prosecutions about 6 months ago. The crazy thing is, it hasn't stopped. They're still doing it. Okay. Now here's the real crazy thing: is the AG's office is a big operation, right? They do 38 roughly 1,000 cases a year, lawsuits. It's a busy place. They have a public integrity unit that houses the voter fraud division. It's a very small division. The problem is they only have oversight of criminal, and they don't do investigations. They respond to complaints, meaning I've communicated with those guys. They know what's going on down there, but we have to file a complaint. So we're working on that. But like I said, we just requested some stuff. We're working with some people down there. Requested it because the locals can't get it. We requested it, and they've already shredded it. So it was interesting because when we first requested it, they had it. And then by the time our formal request came through, they had already shredded it. But this is the problem. Just to give you a quick context, misdemeanors have a 24-month, election fraud misdemeanors have a 24-month, that's what I'm looking for, statute of limitations, and the felonies have a 36-month. So I would like the legislature to make the retention 36 months for everything, okay? So how do they do it? So I'm gonna tell you real quick how they go about it. I just showed you the mechanics of it. So the applications are filled out and signed by harvesters. The voter never applies for the ballot. We go talk to these voters, they say, oh, they just send me my ballot. The mayor sends me my ballot, whoever. They just, in their minds, there's no application. The voter is then harvested using various techniques and scripts. Get into that real quick. Harvesters are typically middle-aged to older women, demographic specific, meaning whites to whites, Hispanics to Hispanics, African Americans to African Americans. They come across as very motherly, sisterly, and trustworthy, and they present themselves as doing the service. These voters think that they're being helped. So what's their interaction? They'll come to their door and offer to help them with their ballot, but a lot of times they already have their ballot with them. So I mentioned that they fax the applications, right? So they fax the applications on Wednesdays. The ballot, they know that the ballot will be in the voter's mailbox Friday or Saturday. That way the harvester can show up. So they show up and they offer to help them with their ballot that they just happen to know is there. The voter never thinks, how do they know my ballot's here? So we have a number of different stories. I'll give you one that's always great. This gentleman and his wife live in front of the school. The school is the polling location. They literally walk out their door across the street and they go vote. She shows up. She says, hey, can I help you do your mail-in vote? He's like, I vote right there. Why would I mail it in? I can walk 60 feet. And she persists. She sees he's not going to do it. Says, well, I have a quota. My boss, you're my last one for the day. Will you sign my form so I can get credit and go home for the day? Guy says, sure. She hands him the clipboard. He signs. Says, well, will your wife sign it too? He says, sure. He goes, gets his wife, come back, signs. They go. He walks across the street 3 weeks later to vote, and guess what? He already voted. So I sit there and I interviewed him, and his name is Pete Gomez. I said, Mr. Gomez, talk to me through this, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we videoed all this, and I said, what did you sign? And I said, was it an iPad or a clipboard? He said, it was a clipboard. I said, what did it look like? Was it a form? What was it? He said, it was a form with a lot of words, and it was yellow. If y'all remember at the beginning, your carrier envelope is yellow, okay? So when I pull up Mr. Gomez's carrier envelope, he signed his own carrier envelope. It's his signature, but he did it under false pretense, okay? They also will do the same thing where they come out and do petitions, and they'll have a manila envelope with the, how you have the address window cut out? They'll have the address window cut out for the signature line. And I've spoken to voters who have asked them, why is the petition? They said, well, we've covered up the other signatures for the privacy of the petition signers. You just sign right there on that line. Wow. So you sign on the line and you just sign your own carrier envelope. So when Aaron Harris goes and looks, it's your signature on the carrier envelope.
Wow.
Now, the crazy thing about this is still not their signature on the application. And that's a whole other set of questions. So they're very good and creative at using different ways to get people to sign at their door. One of the most common, the widest used, is just they're there to help you. You vote Democrat, right? Never mind, it's a municipal election. right? And you vote Democrat, here, I've already filled out your ballot, just sign here, we'll take care of it for you, I'll go mail it for you. And the voter's like, great, I just got to vote, I didn't have to do a thing, and she just helped me, okay? She didn't help you, she just disenfranchised you and harvested your vote. We had one of them that said, oh, she just does it for me, she knows I vote all Democrat. In her race, it was on the north side of Fort Worth, it was a Democrat versus a Democrat, and our interviewer said, which Democrat did you vote for? And she was utterly confused. Up until that point, she thought the harvester was helping her. So we sent about 2,000 pages of evidence to the AG's office in October of 2015. In January, we had this referral. Just wanted to show you guys some of the charges they're looking at. Failure to comply with section 1.011 as a witness, improperly serving as a witness to multiple voters, forgery and tampering of governmental records, unlawful possession of carrier envelopes, and improper assistance. And that's by Keating, or Director of Elections. And so this investigation went public, or its existence went public, I think about October of last year. And all I can really say is it's ongoing. They're interviewing people, and I'm very pleased with the direction it's going. And I'll say this, I'm the first one to criticize government employees, but we have some very awesome, capable guys in the public integrity unit at the AG's office, both from an investigative, I've worked with different investigators in Hill County and one different in Tarrant County. Those guys are genuinely good. They go above and beyond, they really care. So I'm really excited about where this is heading. Now I'm gonna show you a couple things how this actually affects actual races. So this is Sal Espino, who is the mayor pro tem of the city of Fort Worth, okay? Not a small place. Now, Sal actually won this race theoretically by 26 votes, okay? 1170 to 1144. Now the interesting thing is if you look at election day, he actually lost election day really bad. Where he won was in early, and if you break that down, he won it by mail-in votes. Every single one of those that I showed you was cast in Sal's race, okay? And I don't think I showed you quite 26, but I could give you a number, we'll say in the hundreds. So Steve Thornton theoretically lost by 26 votes. Now, do you guys remember this application, the Sienna Garcia's that I showed you was cast one year after the other? The thing about this is up here, not only do we have the date, but when you send a fax, it also tells you where the fax is sent from, right? So the interesting thing about these, they send them from the same place every year by the thousands, and it's none other than Sal Espino's office.
That piece of shit's not a president.
Well, so Sal has since announced that he's not running for re-election because he spent more time with the family or something. So the interesting thing about that race is, so I was running, that was the same campaign that I was running the water board race, and they harvested votes. So they harvest votes for a slate normally, right? So they don't go out and just do a city council guy, they do a whole slate. And the interesting thing was the people in that neighborhood knew, so Steve's campaign, or actually he was a firefighter, so the firefighters union actually sent out a mailer warning people in that neighborhood that they were harvesting votes. And it was funny because we were out block walking when they dropped this mail, and we started getting a lot of resistance at the door, even though we were out just doing normal block walking. And at the time I was so naive to all this, it didn't really dawn on me. But afterwards what it really showed me was the people in that community all know this is going on, including the candidates, but nobody had ever done anything about it. So this is the one that really chaps me. So this is Ramon Romero versus Lon Burnham. So Lon Burnham was an 18-year incumbent Democrat. This is a strongly Democrat district in Fort Worth. And Ramon Romero beat him in the Democrat primary in 2014, okay? Allegedly, he beat him by 110 votes. Now, he won that, Tarrant County doesn't display it right now, but we wrote it down. He won that by mail-in votes once again. If you remember, some of these I showed you were 14 and 15. All the ones from 15 were the same ballots used, applications used in 14, used in 12. And we have, again, we're not releasing specific numbers, we have hundreds of digital signatures and around 1,000 voters with identical handwriting and hundreds of fraudulent signatures in that race, okay? I know, based upon the evidence we've gathered from that race, Lon actually won this race. Now, here's the interesting thing. Lon Burnham sued Ramon. However, they won it by mail-in votes, and they could not get the applications for ballot by mail because they were annual. Okay, this was a primary. They went before a judge, and the judge denied Lon the ability to see those applications.
Wow.
If Lon had the ability to see those applications and do this within the 30-day period, which they would have been able to overturn this election. Same with this race. This was actually the first race we looked at. Again, we didn't know what we were doing, so we asked them to pull out this is District 2, and Lon Burnham, myself, and a couple other people went down there and looked at these. And within less than an hour, we had more than 26. And we kept going, we looked through all of them, we found a lot, and we made copies. It was 3 Democrats, which those of you that know me, I'm about as far to the right as you get, but politics makes strange bedfellows. And there's 3 Democrats, my assistant and I remember we went outside and we stood around a circle like a little prayer meeting, and we were just in shock, and we looked at each other because we had seen with our own eyes the stolen election. I'd heard, you always think about that stuff, but we saw it with our own eyes. It was absolutely insane. If they had had access to those applications and to those ballots within the 30 days, it would have taken them an hour to overturn that election. Same with Lon's race. They did not. It took us literally 1 hour to find those once we went down there in person. So these are some other people that we're not saying they, so let me be clear. I'm flat out saying that Sal and Ramon stole their elections, okay? So if anybody has any doubt about what the accusation I'm making is, I'm flat out saying they stole their elections. These next people, I'm saying they benefited from it, but I'm not saying these elected officials necessarily did it, okay? People working on their behalf did. And so that's Jim Lane and Marty Leonard from the Tarrant Regional Water District. Mark Vesey, Congressman District 33, Kelly Allen Gray, City of Fort Worth City Council. They actually operate a large operation out of her sister's garage doing this stuff. Pilar Candia, who is District Director for Salaspino, she ran for JP. Sergio DeLeon, JP, District 5 in Tarrant County. Ruben Garcia, Constable Precinct 5. Terry Ayala on TCC, which is our county community college. Toby Jackson, Fort Worth ISD. Judy Needham in Sutherland. Christine Moss and T.A. Sims. All those are with the Fort Worth ISD. And then, of course, it was interesting. They actually harvested the Fort Worth City Charter amendments. Fort Worth had 12 city charter amendments last May, and they used this operation a lot. It was crazy for them to do it because the investigation was already underway at that point. But they didn't believe us. So it was the best thing. It was the best gift we could ask for. They did it right while the AG was watching. And then of course, Salaspino and Ramon. The one thing that should stand out to you here is how overly represented the ISD is. And you always think of voter fraud like in November, right? But all these races are pretty much primaries and municipals. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But I want to say a couple things first. No one is suggesting we eliminate mail-in ballots, only those wanting to feed Democrats talking points. So some of the establishment have come out and said, well, the solution is to eliminate mail-in ballots. Nobody's suggesting that, okay? This is about power, money, and money through graft. It is not an ideological issue. What we were able to do in our investigation through, not the stuff I just showed you, but through the investigation, is document the entire structure from canvasser, harvester, the low-level lady working in the street, all the way up to who's writing the checks. Who's writing the checks would really surprise you, okay? This is not about Republican or Democrat, okay? This is about graft. These people are getting contracts. These people are making money off of these deals, okay? The amount of money they pay a Hispanic canvasser is pittance, okay? We have a vendor in Fort Worth who funds this operation in the municipal elections. They just got a no-bid $75 to $80 million contract, okay? Not 2 months after the election. This is what it's about. It's about graft, okay? There are simple reforms and enforcement changes that can be put in place to curb these activities. We'll be working with the legislature to enact those changes. And so, I'll get to that here in just a second. There was a hearing on September 21st. Actually, if you're a political nerd, and go back, and that whole hearing was phenomenal. But one of the prosecutors with the Office of the Attorney General was asked a question about this by one of the reps, and he made a statement that I thought was really good, which is that if democracy stands for the principle of one person, one vote, then ballot harvesting stands for the principle of one person, 100 votes. And that's so true. You see people like these canvassers. There are canvassers that get an incredible amount of votes every cycle, and they can single-handedly determine these city council and primary races. A lot of these primaries are determined within very close margins. And so it's a big problem. As I mentioned, this was Tarrant County. We're now doing Dallas County. Dallas County is looking to put Tarrant to shame. I don't think any of us will be surprised by that, but it's honestly, it's mind-boggling because of the amount we found in Tarrant County. We're getting calls to start Harris County. We'll see. You know, I value my life, so I'm not sure if I want to go to Harris County. And then, like I said, we just found it in Marshall, Texas. So it's all over the place. It's right there for anybody to see, but you have to know what you're looking for. So let me get to the legislative part, because I know Matt's here, and I know there's a lot of questions about this. We have worked with certain reps and senators. Van Taylor's a great ally. Van's going to be having some bills, and Schofield's working on a bill. Mike Schofield out of the Houston area, he's the one that actually asked the question. Schofield's going to have some bills. Stephanie Click's going to have some bills. We've worked with some legislators behind the scenes to get some bills filed. We're not publicly going out there and pushing bills right now, we being myself, because we have been in the headlines. Some of the other people know who we are. We don't want to give them a target to shoot at, okay? So there are some good bills that are going to be making their way through the House, through the Senate. The good guys like Matt and the Collin County delegation are going to know which those bills are, and I mean, at face value, they're going to make sense. But I'll say the number one problem we have is that the Office of the Attorney General has very little enforcement ability because the election laws are so weak. They're incredibly weak. The vast majority of these violations are misdemeanors. And there are felonies in here, don't get me wrong, but the majority of election fraud and things that happen are misdemeanors. And so if you think about it, if you're a prosecutor in Austin and you have a misdemeanor in Harrison County or Tarrant County or Hidalgo, are you really going to fly back and forth and prosecute a misdemeanor? No, you're going to plead it out. They're going to get probation. And then when the media does an open records request asking for election fraud, how many convictions are they going to find? 0. Now, it's not 0, but they're going to find very few because the vast majority of these are misdemeanors that get pleaded out. So it's very hard to get these guys on felonies. So we have to increase the penalties, and that's a bill that Schofield's working on. I'm actually very excited about that bill. There's a lot of technicalities in the election code. I could nerd you guys out. Aaron knows, okay? We could nerd out on election code stuff, but at the end of the day, all that election code stuff aside, if we don't actually have penalties for people that break these things, all the election code in the world is worthless. And that's where we find ourselves today. And so that's the most important thing, is to encourage your legislators and your senators to give the election code some teeth. With that, I will open it up to questions. Yes, sir.
Well, a couple of things. First, right at the very beginning, you said that a judge denied you. And then you talked about some judges kind of along the way that didn't seem particularly helpful. And I refer back also, we had another person in here a few months ago, Laura Presley. And the judge threw her case out. Tell me more about what's going on with the judiciary. Do we have a problem there too?
Yeah, well, yes. Part of it's cultural, and I'll say, sorry, when I speak, my nervous thing is I get caught in the mouth, so bear with me. We have a couple things there. First is a culture, there's a judicial culture, right or wrong, where they don't want to mess with elected officials in the system, right? If you start overturning elections, the argument is you could cause a chaos to our democratic system, right? And there's some truth to that, but not in light of hard facts, right? So what we have to walk is this line of putting in place rules and laws and codes that allow us to challenge bad elections, but yet not have somebody come back and contest Matt Shaheen's primary today that was a year ago, right? So we can't have this perpetual challenge and chaos of elections. So what happens with judges is they're always going to err on the side of clearing their docket. They're always going to err on the side of keeping it simple. And they're just very hesitant to go there. Secondly, I'll go back to the thing, it always comes back to the election code is very vague on most of these things. So I'll give you, I mentioned that Lon Burnham was denied access to the ballots in his suit. Okay, just to be clear, I was not involved in that, but Lon was, he asked to see the applications. The problem is, when the legislature created annual applications for ballot by mail, that was in the 83rd legislature. Lon's was literally the first election we held after that law went into effect, okay? But over here is the section about applications for ballot by mail, and they simply added the wording that we can now do annuals. Over here in this other part of the code, this is kind of legislative council job, but it happens, is where it talks about access to this information by the public, and it says that you only have access the day after the election. And I talked to the members on the committee who created the annuals. They had no idea about this. And that's the problem. Every time we file a bill, I'm gonna pick on Matt because he's here. Every time Matt files a bill, or any of the other 47 Matts in the House file a bill, I kid, because if y'all don't know, Matt is like the most overrepresented name in the House. But anytime they file a bill, there's unintended consequences, right? And a lot of our election code, with the annual application by mail, that's the problem, is unintended consequences. So if you're a judge, or you're Keith Ingram, the Secretary of State, Director of Elections, what interpretation are you going to take? The safest one every time. So that's a cultural problem. I'm not sure how you fix that.
We vote them out because that's weak.
Yeah, you can vote them out. The other thing I think we can do is actually like expose some actual election fraud, have this stuff be known that it's real, and the judges will take it more seriously. Because I think there's, outside of this room and outside of grassroots and Tea Party rooms around the state, most people just don't believe it's that big of a deal. And so by exposing this, the thing about our work that I showed you tonight, and again, we're only showing the stuff that we know, they know that we, everything I showed you tonight I got through open records requests, okay? There's a lot more that we can't go public with. But the thing about mail-in ballot fraud is it's very visual, right? All y'all look at those signatures and you go, those don't match, okay? With, for example, with Laura's, where it's electronic, that's all math and formulas and my eyes glaze over, right? But it's not as visual as this. It's just as real, but it's not as visual. So one of the things I'm hopeful of is that due to the visual nature of our evidence, that it increases the desire on the part of legislators to enact reform. When I first started this, I called a guy at the AG's office who I knew, and I had no idea he worked in the Public Integrity Unit. And I started telling him about the stuff I was finding. I thought this was crazy. Surely this doesn't exist everywhere. And he was very nonchalant about it. And I said, you act like as if this is it. He goes, Aaron, we get this, it's everywhere, you know? And I asked him, why do people believe it doesn't exist? And he said, well, because everything's a misdemeanor, we plead it out, and so when the media asks, there's no convictions. And so we went through some of those structural problems. I said, why doesn't the legislature do anything? He said, there's no desire on the part of the legislature to spend political capital on this because it just hasn't been proven to be a big deal to them. So it's up to us to apply pressure on the legislature for them to spend political capital on this issue. Go ahead. Yeah.
Donald Trump thinks that there, on the national level, there's millions of these fraudulent votes. He would actually won the popular vote if that wasn't true. Do you agree or think?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I've done to a very small degree. We looked at the voter rolls. So voter rolls, that hearing that I mentioned on September 21st September 21st, Texas House Elections Committee, there was 3 charges. One was about the voter rolls. So Aaron has experience with this. For those of you who don't know, it's Aaron Anderson over here with True the Vote, or used to be True the Vote. And so the voter rolls, a lot of what Donald Trump's talking about is illegal immigrants and other people that aren't eligible to vote being on the voter rolls. I'll tell you we're in Collin County right here, right?
Right.
Okay, sorry. What percentage of people registered? So there's 2 types of registered voters, active and suspense or suppressed, but suspense is the most common term. Just looking at active voters, what percentage of active voters in Collin County you think have moved and don't even live at the address that they're registered in?
Oh, yeah.
15%.
15%. Of those 55% have moved out of the county, okay? And they're still actively registered at that address. My next step is going to be to see how many have voted from that address since they moved. So the interesting thing is across the 4-county area, Denton, Collin, Tarrant, and Dallas, we find about the same. It varies by about 1.5% or so. And that's just simply using a commercially available national change of address registry. For those of you that don't know, every mail house in America by regulation with the post office has to use NCOA as national change of address and update their database every 90 days, okay? So if you take a mailer to the mail house, they will run your list against NCOA and scrub it. This costs you $1,000 a year for the entire 50 states, okay? Yet the Secretary of State somehow says it would be impossible for us to use for voter rolls. I can't understand that, but if you just run it against that, you'll see that most people, or about 15% of people have moved. In Collin County, it's 15%. That's before you even get into eligibility issues with these voters, right? So if you think Texas has, we hit a record the other day. I can't remember how many registered voters we have statewide, but it's tens of millions. Is it 7? I don't remember that. It's millions and millions of people, okay? So you take 15% of that, take 15% of California, take 15% of Florida, do you get to the 3 million number that Donald Trump's talking about? I don't know, okay?
Easy.
And so, yeah, because our population is 24 million, I don't remember. Now, a lot of people that are registered to vote in Texas are voter motor, right? You go to register or get your driver's license, you automatically get registered. But you have a high percentage of people that are registered that for various reasons should not be registered at that address, or they could flat out not be eligible. So, yeah, I think it's very possible. I don't know what the numbers are.
Well, if you only have 2% voter fraud, and I guess that's 3 million people of all the votes that were cast.
There you go.
You talked at the beginning about the people that double check the signatures.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're in on the whole deal. Is that where we need to start? Get those people off and get honest people checking?
Great question. So that is what's called the ballot board, okay? So let me explain that real quick. For every election, you have a ballot board. Every county has an election committee. The election committee is made up of your county judge, your 2 county party chairs, Democrat and Republican county party chair, your tax assessor, and your county clerk, okay? Now, that board of 5 will vote, actually it's the ballot board committee, different committee, which is made up of your elections administrator, your judge, and your 2 county chairs, votes for the judges, the ballot board judges, and you'll typically have one from the Democrats and one from the Republicans, am I right? Okay, getting a nod over here. So they vote on the judges. Those are people that the parties select, just like election judges for your polling places, okay? They then fill in who the actual workers are going to be. During the primary, the Democrats have their ballot board and the Republicans have their ballot board. In the municipals, it's one ballot board, mostly done by the elections administrator, okay? One of the problems is, I don't know about over here, but in Tarrant County, the Republicans are completely absent in the municipal elections. The Democrats stacked the entire ballot board, okay? And so I mentioned to you that they're doing this in Democrat primaries. They have their own ballot board, folks, and they're doing this in municipal races. Do you know who works the municipal races for the ballot board? All the Democrat primary ballot board members, okay? So what we did is we identified the races where they're doing this in, and we looked at the payrolls for all the ballot board, and it's the same people. There's an issue there. The fact they didn't match these signatures is crazy. Now, little tidbit in our investigation, I actually interviewed some of these members of the ballot board. And I interviewed them under the premise of, explain to me how this works. How's the process work? Tell me what you do. Okay, I want to learn the system. In that, I showed them a couple of these signatures and asked them how they would process these. They didn't know, but they had signed off on those ballots. Okay, so we showed people the ballots that they signed off on when we were interviewing. And without exception, they said, well, I'd never approve this one. But they signed on it. That's going to be up to the Attorney General to figure out what those people's story is and what to do about
I
that.
just want to say that the Collin County Board are extremely honest.
You know, what was funny, because of this, because of our presentation, and some of the work we did, in November, we had a bunch of Republicans on there. We had some Republicans in Dallas County that got engaged in the ballot board, and they got kicked off for being too detailed and taking too long. They were actually verifying the signatures. Go ahead.
I served on the ballot board, and they're very good, and we have a lot of Republicans represented,
Actually,
such make you feel really
even the
good.
Democrats are.
But there were some Democrats that, we were in a little committee because we had stacks of signatures. We needed to compare the application to the envelope. And they didn't look like they matched, so we gathered up equal number of Republicans and Democrats, and at least one Libertarian, and then we would all vote. We'd pass the envelopes around the table, and then we would vote. Should we accept it or not? And some of the people we realized apparently had gone to a nursing home, and the same witness was the same witness for several of these. And we said, well, they can't do that. And they go, oh, yes, they can. And so we called Neil Katz over to check out. And we said, what does the Texas election code say about multiple people witnessing these ballots? And he said, no, they're only allowed to witness one ballot. And the Democrats were just like freaking out.
That's right, but that's also a new law that just went into effect last year. You can only witness is where you help them with their signature, okay? Versus assisting. Let's say I have an application, I fill out your name and address and give it to you to sign, I assisted you. But if you're incapable and I sign on your behalf, and I witness. Now here's the thing, I don't even know why we have witness, because the code says they can sign an X, they can sign their fingerprint. If you can sign an X for one, anyhow, don't get me started.
Yeah.
But the new law is that you can only witness for one non-immediate family member per year, not per election cycle. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, ask your county if they have a process in place to track who's witnessed what. So in the scenario, and I don't know if, I tell you right now, Tarrant doesn't. They don't even attempt. They say we can't do that. You can, and you have to abide by the code, which is a large reason why our election administrator in Tarrant County, by the way, also resigned, but didn't promptly pick him up, and good luck, good riddance. But they don't have a process in place. So if Tracy witnessed yesterday, came in, and then another Tracy witness comes in today, unless I happen to get both, there's no way to know. It's not that hard, guys. You can just keep a log, do all the witnesses, set the witnesses one to the side, do them at the end of the day, like you're describing. There's not that many witnesses. But I'll say this, the fraud we're seeing isn't because people signed as a witness. People that sign as a witness kind of put their name on there. It's the people that aren't. Now obviously you have what appears to be a nursing home harvesting operation. They might do that, so that's a problem. But you can only witness one non-family member per year. So if you do the primary, you can't do it anymore. Key there being non-family. If you're doing it for your parents, you can do that. That's fine. Okay. Next question. Yes, sir.
You hinted at an attempt to follow the money, and one of the comments I had, or thoughts, is who's paying these harvesters? How far up the chain have you gone? And does the Attorney General have his hands on those names all the way?
Yeah, so there's an ongoing investigation, and the piece of evidence we gave them that they were most interested in was the organizational chart. We gave them a complete organizational chart. When they came and interviewed me for the first time, I had read a lot about the stuff down in the valley that I mentioned where the school board members committed suicide on me. That's a very extreme case, but not only that, they had put 6 people in jail, felony jail, which is, given our election code, nearly impossible. So the guy that came to interview me happened to be the same investigator that worked that case. I was a little kind of like, oh man, awesome, great to meet you. And after we talked, I asked him, I said, what's the difference between Tarrant County and what you saw in the valley? And he said, the MO, the operating is the same. The difference is Tarrant County's operation is much larger. And he said, but the difference is the amount of work that we did and gave them, specifically the organizational chart. They never get that. They get the evidence, they get, and you start from that. We gave them the full org chart, we gave them interviews, we gave them audio, we gave them video, we gave them all the ballots and applications. They had to go duplicate or get that originals from Tarrant County. They did all that, but we gave them the org chart and we gave them how to do that, how to track all that. So they're much smarter than I am, and we'll leave it at that. So yeah, I'm very optimistic.
You mentioned voter fraud is a misdemeanor. Is that state and local versus, how about federal?
So great question. So he asked that I said most of it was misdemeanors, and what about federal? Election code is a state code, okay? Where you get into federal is if you get into Voting Rights Suppression Act, or Voting Rights Act, sorry, like voter suppression, things like that, or bribery, if you get into bribery, or if you get into committing these in a congressional or Senate race, or presidential race, okay? So in the Valley that I mentioned, the AG was able to bring in the FBI as well to share resources and go because there was a congressional race involved. If you don't have a congressional race involved or a DOJ Voting Rights Act issue, then the AG is going to have jurisdiction, or the DA. So one of the problems with voter fraud is everybody's got jurisdiction. So you have all 254 counties, the sheriff can file a complaint, the DA can prosecute. So you won't know about that unless you open record request to the county. So we tried to go out and so let's get an idea, let's get a snapshot of how big of a problem this is. So we contacted all 254 counties.
Really?
Yes. You know how many of them keep records? Only about 10. Okay? You can't get the information. So 254 counties, each DA has jurisdiction. The AG has jurisdiction. We open record requested that log. You have about 149 cases a year of voter frauds that get referred. So referral is different. A complaint gets filed, and if it meets a violation, it gets a referral for investigation. Okay. So you have 149 a year referrals, but yet it doesn't exist. Now keep in mind, Tarrant County, we have hundreds of charges. That's one referral. Okay. So I need to understand that. So the AG averages 149 referrals a year. The DAs, we have no idea. And then you have the FBI in certain cases can have their own, so you got to FOIA that as well. But most of these are all state violations. Where we're looking at, we have met with the FBI. The FBI is looking at some of these things as well. I just, again, can't comment on a lot of that, but you got to get in the Voting Rights Act. One of the things you have here is all the victims. These voters are victims. These voters don't know what's going on. They really don't. You talk to them. When I show them, because I say I don't go to these doors. We hire ethically appropriate people for each neighborhood. Actually, to be honest with you, the people we hire are their canvassers who have turned on them, okay? So these are the women that have been on these doors before. We now hire them. We go back into our investigation. When we interview them and ask them about these handwritings, is this your handwriting? These voters get upset because they realize that somebody else has voted on their behalf. Their interviews are honestly some of the best evidence we have because of their emotional reaction to what's going on. But due to the fact they're all minorities, and due to the fact they're elderly, you have Voting Rights Act situations there. So, next.
Has the FBI been helpful and honest?
Yes. The FBI doesn't talk much though, right? So they listen, they ask questions, we'll see what they do, but, go ahead.
That's got me worried already.
Who would be the best person to flood their office with calls, faxes, email, everything? Just flood them and make them so crazy that they'll push this forward. Who should we do that to?
So the answer to that question is, we're at the very beginning of the legislative session, so I can't give you a solid answer because the bills are just starting to really formulate and come through. I'll say that the two investigations we had, I told you, Hill and Tarrant, Ken Paxton's office is doing everything they can. I've actually been very impressed with what they've done with the resources they have. This is kind of the stepchild division of the AG's office because it's hard to retain people in this department. They don't want to stay here. They want to go do sexier type cases. But they have the guys that are there, the seasoned guys that are there because they believe in this cause and they're really good. And to that point, Ken and Jeff Mateer and the senior staff at the AG's office have given them the resources within their capabilities. So I have no complaints with Ken. I did a few months ago. He heard some cries. He's responded very well. With that said, the legislature's where it's at, okay? So Schofield hasn't filed his bill yet, so I can't give you that. I don't know what the number's gonna be. But that's gonna be my main thing, is gonna be, we need to get all the reps, all the senators behind Schofield's bill, because if we can't put these guys in handcuffs, they're gonna keep doing it. And by the way, I'll say this, every time there's a voter fraud issue in Texas, they all have the same defense attorney. Domingo Garcia, or what's the Democrat state chairman's name? Yes, Roberto Hinojosa, okay? It's always the same two guys. In Tarrant County, they've all lawyered up Domingo Garcia. Doesn't cost them a dime, and the MO is, don't worry about it, we'll get you off, and you can be back on the streets harvesting votes for the next election. And they did, okay? And I'll tell you right now, in Tarrant County, every last one of them, from the canvasser all the way up, is represented by Domingo Garcia. There's a case, I don't know if y'all heard the case of the gal, illegal immigrant. To your question about illegal immigrants voting, there's a case right now, goes to trial, pre-trial's Friday, starts on Monday, is a week from tomorrow, it's pre-trial. An illegal immigrant who voted in Dallas and then came over and voted, I think, 6 times in Tarrant County and then went back to Dallas, okay? Maria Ortega, I can't remember her name, it's Maria Ortega something. And
What's the address?
which one, right? So I'm actually going to that court case, like I said, pre-trial hearings a week from tomorrow in that case. So that she wasn't even eligible to vote, she was illegal. The enforcement bill, so the answer to your question is keep an eye out for the bill that's going to increase penalties. And it will be a Mike Schofield bill more than likely. Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the time that these people are allowed to dispense the information, is there any aspect in this legislation that requires the data to be kept for a right period of time?
That's a great question. That's one of the other legislations we're pushing for. Yeah, because, so when the election happens, if it's a primary, you have till 2 p.m. the day after the election gets canvassed to contest the election. The election gets canvassed in a window, give or take 2 weeks after the election, okay? Then you have till 2 p.m. the next day. If it's a municipal election, you have 30 days. If it's a general, does anybody know? I think it's 30 days as well, but there's different rules. My whole problem, take Hill County, which you're very astute in observing that, is even if we wanted to contest that, it took us 2.5 months to get the data. So we've been talking to legislators about cleaning up the calendar. While the law says that the counties have to give us that data, it doesn't say you have to give it to them in any specific amount of time. So they all just say, we don't have it ready, we don't have it ready, we don't have it ready. So what we would ideally like to see is give them a much tighter window to have the data available, but then the recount clock not kick in until that day, or be based off of that day. So you have to give candidates and the public a reasonable amount of time to evaluate the data to call for a recount based upon when we can see the data. And so that's what I've been talking to legislators about, is let's change the trigger point to be the data availability, which will automatically make counties be more, be faster, be more prompt, thank you, in getting that data and so forth.
But
And she has a follow-up.
the other aspect, though, is them shredding the information. I mean, we have to keep bank statements and things like that for 7 years, and they can shred this paperwork in 6 months.
Yeah, medical
Well, you and I both know that the government doesn't live on the same standards we do, right? In the hierarchy of life, there's in the United States, right, the number one class is government, and then animals and citizens, right? So there is no parity there. Y'all joke, yeah. So yeah, we have asked also. We will see legislation about retention.
Yes.
They
Yes.
tried to get an injunction
On
to enjoin them from shredding.
well, all this we learned after the fact. So we haven't had occasion to do that yet. Yeah. But so let me on that point. If we file a complaint in time, the AG will have, if the AG gets a complaint, they'll notify the county right away to I can't remember the technical term, but they have to retain it all for the investigation. And the AG can look at it and say, okay, there's nothing here, and tell them go ahead and release it or keep it. So like Tarrant County's been notified, y'all can't shred anything. Hill County, they didn't just know, they went and just seized it all, okay? So yeah, they can't shred that. Yes?
Bonds, I've been, your information up here just confirmed something that I've been suspecting for a long time about these bond issues, especially with the school boards pushing these things down our throat. And I testified at a little rolling
Rolling, absolutely.
rolling deal here a couple months ago.
You must live in Frisco.
No.
Frisco's notorious for that.
They're friends. No, well, it's actually, we've got the same problem at Lovejoy, and what I've noticed is TASB trains everybody, the ins and outs. Whenever there's a new law, they hold a new class for all the superintendents, and then they know how to work the system again, and just barely stay on the other side of the law, or this side of the law. But are you going to be looking into the bond issues?
So the answer to your question is, are we going to just go, well, let me back up. Your question is, are we going to be looking into the bond issues? We're not going to
vote harvesting on these bond issues, because it would be so easy to do.
Yeah.
So few people vote for them. They just go collect the votes. And I know, and I've had ex-Democrats tell me one of the reasons they left the party was they saw the corruption inside it.
Right.
And told me all about it 20 years ago.
So we are looking at, we have data guys looking at different patterns in elections. Where we find elections that meet those patterns, then yeah, we'll probably dig into those. I'll be honest with you, and I was telling somebody this yesterday, I could hire a staff of, who knows, 3, 4, 5 people and have them stay on this full time and probably find stuff all the time. I will say this, so far we've looked into 5 counties and we're batting 100. There's 254 counties, okay? And you gotta keep in mind, we can only go back 24 months. I could have a crew, I could have a staff of 10 take 1.5 years just in Dallas County.
Sure.
Okay, I could have a staff of 10 in Harris County, but they'd probably get killed faster than they, so. Y'all think it's funny. But don't even get started in the Valley. The Valley is insane. So the answer to your question, we're looking at patterns, we're looking at data, so y'all had Laura specializes in electronic voting machines. I'll be honest, I know very little about electronic voting machines relative to other people. We know the mail-in ballot process. This is what we keep seeing. Also, in talking to the AG and the prosecutors and the investigators, they will tell you, do we have cases of voter identification issues, where voter impersonation, where they show up and vote for somebody else? You do. Like the one in Tarrant County that I just mentioned that starts a week from tomorrow, that's a voter impersonation. She voted as other people. Those happen. She voted 6 times. These canvassers are voting 1,000. Okay. The actual in that same hearing, Schofield asked him, "Is our problem?" And this is the prosecutor who I consider a stud, who has more convictions for voter fraud than anybody else. He asked him, "Is our problem voter impersonation, or is our problem vote harvesting, stealing mass votes, and stealing entire elections?" And the prosecutor said, "Our problem in Texas is vote harvesting in mass, stealing entire elections." So that's what we're looking at more than voter impersonation or those types of things. Those patterns you can see, mainly because they don't follow the in-person organic vote patterns. Okay, I showed you Sal's, right? Sal lost ugly on election day where people showed up in person, but the mail-in ballots turned him around for us. So those patterns are what we're looking for. And there's a ton of them in Dallas. Holy cow. Okay. And by the way, for anybody that says this doesn't exist, in Dallas there was a JP in 2010. Art Sepulveda lost to Medrano. I forget which Medrano it was. Anybody know the name Medrano? There's a guy in Dallas City Council by the name of Adam Medrano. Okay, they are a crime syndicate family, and Medrano beat Art Sepulveda, and the AG ended up coming in. They convicted Medrano, got him kicked out of office because he won that election by fraudulent mail-in ballots. One of the things he did in that race was he had a bunch of family members have fake addresses and vote in the district by mail who didn't live there, among other things. Their family is in the mail-in ballot consulting business. Tarrant County Democrat chairperson Deborah Peoples has a consulting company. Do you know what her consulting company does? Mail-in ballot operations. There is a current city council candidate in Dallas, who I won't name right now, who has a $30,000 budget for his campaign, 15 of which is going to the Medrano family for their mail-in ballot operation. What do you think their strategy for victory is?
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't rocket science. I actually found myself in a weird position because of this. Politics makes strange bedfellows. I went and helped a Hispanic Democrat run for DISD last year against a white female Republican. You want to know what? I'll summarize with why, because me, the white Republican, was helping the Hispanic Democrat, and she hired the Medrano Hispanic cartel to go harvest her votes, and she won. That may or may not be part of our investigation, but it's right there. Nobody has the guts to go look. Nobody goes looks at it. If they know it's there, they don't have the guts to. And I'll share a quick story. When I first started looking at this, I went and met with Lon Burnham and Steve Thornton. It was the first time they explained to me how this whole thing worked, because I didn't know. I come from a suburban Republican area, right? So they started explaining all this to me, and I said, guys, I'm struggling with this. If y'all all know about this, why haven't you done anything about it? I mean, that's the normal question we should all ask, right? And make no mistake, there's two types of Democrats. Those that benefit from this and those who get beat by this. And those that get beat by this are the ones you go talk to, because they'll tell you. So hence I was having coffee with Lon Burnham. He got beat by it. And he said, Aaron, A, we don't have the resources, which I'll be honest with you, this is a resource-intensive operation. You don't find this stuff easy. Secondly, where are we going to go? And when he said that, what are you talking about? He said, we have a Republican DA and a Republican Attorney General. Where is Lon Burnham going to go? And at the time, I discounted him. I said, that's just an excuse. But I'll say this, here I am a year and a half later and a year and a half wiser, and there's a lot of truth in that. The politics behind voter fraud investigations is insane. Had I not had the political connections to move this into a full-fledged investigation, it would have never happened. This didn't just become a full-fledged investigation because I put together the evidence and submitted to the SOS, okay? It sat on the SOS's desk without ever getting open for 5 months until I made political contacts. The politics is what's moving this thing forward. A Democrat would have never gotten an investigation out of this. I'm 100% convinced of that. And so there's an element within the Democratic Party who have become friends of mine, oddly enough, and they have been my best resources because they want it rooted out. Unfortunately for them, they're a small minority, but they're there and they don't know where to go. So what I've done is I've given them someone to come to. So that's been interesting to say the least, okay? But they are there.
So have you got any pushback from certified rhino types?
Oh, absolutely. So I tried to get the applications for ballot by mail and carry envelopes for Charlie Guerin's district, and the DA tried to charge me $64,816.
Oh, man.
Because
All the other districts were
rhinos
dollars.
have been in cahoots with this for years and years.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
And I've just been screaming in the wind, basically, about it for 20 years, and everybody looks at me like I'm an idiot. And
Right. No, they benefit from it. They benefit from it. They turn a blind eye to it. Because when those guys go out and harvest, they'll end up harvesting for them. I mentioned earlier they do slates. They don't have a problem throwing somebody else on there if they're going to protect them or be quiet about it. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm a precinct chair, and during the last election, I tried to get the voter database for my precinct. It was impossible. And apparently, this is a big problem. I know Neil Katz personally. He said in Austin, they had a stack of that high of applications of people, precinct chairs across the state trying to get voter database information. They couldn't do it. They never were processed.
So you're asking the SOS for voter database?
Well, the SOS,
Secretary of State. Well, I would suggest that's probably your first problem. Ask your county elections department.
Well, that's what Neil did.
That's what, this is Collin County, well, it's not.
Neil's the party, isn't he?
He's part of
You
it.
can get that.
No, ask your Collin County Elections Administration office for it. Their records are gonna be more accurate
That's probably true.
than the
But
SOSs
state-
all day long.
State, you couldn't get it from the state.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Not only that, I'll tell you right now, the states are just not as accurate.
Yeah.
It's weird, but we'll order statewide, and we can order the individual states, and the individual states are always, yeah, I've got to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay, one last thing. How can we remove the Secretary of State or keep Ingram or hold them accountable?
So, right now, I don't even know, have they appointed a new SOS yet? Has Abbott appointed a new one? Because Carlos resigned, right?
I don't think he's appointed a new one yet.
Yeah, so our Carlos Cascos resigned. Yeah, so the Secretary of State is a figurehead position. It's a position they give to people to pay back political favors for the most part, okay?
Powerful.
It's administrative. They go around and give speeches. The actual Secretary of State, it's about like being the Queen of England, okay? The staff does stuff. The Secretary of State itself does nothing but do cocktails, okay? They basically go out and tell the state, go to events and tell the state how great the governor who appointed them is.
We are on video.
Matt can't nod his head, but he knows I'm telling the truth. But what they do is they rotate them through. They don't stay very long. The Secretary of State normally stays about 2 years so that the governor can get one of his other cronies up there, okay? So they rotate them through. I wouldn't focus on the Secretary of State, focus on the staff, okay? And or the AG. So like in a voter fraud case, you submit the complaint to the SOS, they look at it, all they really do is look at it to see if there's an election code violation that is alleged, okay? The number one problem I see with people making complaints is there's not an actual election code violation. The election clerk being rude to you is not against the law, folks, okay? And so you have to, it's a real simple form, but go look up your election code and cite it. Section 86.03 says they have to sign as an assist if they fill it out. That's it. If you have an actual code violation, they will then refer it to the AG and let the AG do their thing, okay? I don't have any issues with the AG. The SOS can be very slow. The solution there is just like the solution with anything in government. Call. The squeaky wheel is the grease. Okay. Well, thank you guys. It's been fun.